Right, welcome everyone to this webinar. Today we're talking about a few things, a few important things to do with interview skills for medicine and dentistry. If you don't know who we are, we're Medentors. We're a company that specializes in medicine and dentistry admissions, but we do a lot of other things. And today we're here to sort of talk about one station in an MMI or in a panel interview that a lot of students struggle with, myself included, Ala ad-Din as well, included, that we struggled with these these stations with motivation, work experience, and personality. Anyways, so my name is Kareem. I'm a dental student. I'm joined with Aletta Dean today, who's a medical student. He's one of our new admissions mentors. Please welcome him to the team. Um, and today, so welcome to the Medentors community. We've got our three branches. We've got our first one, which is Academy, which some of you might have not heard of, but we do tuition. We help you get into the grades that you need in GCSEs and A levels. We've got our admissions, which is why all of you are here today. So we mentor people to get into medicine and dentistry. And we also have school workshops and talks on a local level. So if you think that we should come to your school or a community center or any place, reach out to us via Instagram at Medentors, and we could definitely sort something. But anyways, without further ado, so going straight into the webinar, you're all probably year 13s or you're on a gap year. And this is one of the final hurdles. You've gone past all these hurdles here. You've done the foundations, which is getting your work experience, getting your volunteering, getting your personal statement done, getting your GCSEs, and then you've done your end of years, so your UCAS exams for your predicted grades. You've done your UCAT. Oh gosh, that was terrific. You've done your strategic applications, your personal statement, finalizing your choices, and now hopefully you should be expecting some of those interview invites. And some of you might have not received interview invites yet, but I'd advise you to just hang on. Fingers crossed you will get some. But a lot of students, what they miss out on is they get the interview and they work really hard over interview season and they get the offers. Then they get the offers. It's three A's or an A star AA or ABB if you're contextual, whatever it is. And students miss out on the offers because they don't do well in their A levels. So actually, interviews aren't the final hurdle. You've still got your A level exams, and those are really important. And a lot of students do neglect this. And we advise you from now, okay, keep that interview preparation up there, but also balance it with your A levels because you don't want to neglect your A levels. And whether that's dedicating a few hours every week to do interview preparation and just keeping it low key with the A levels. Just it'll be in the backbone, but you can't just stop it. It's got to still stay there, and that's really important because on results day, if you get the grades that you weren't expecting, then you won't have your place in medical or dental school, and all this work for 2 years, for even more than 2 years from GCSEs, all that work will be for nothing if you don't make sure that you get those A levels. So that's really important. And we can support you as well with our webinars for Academy, for our tuition services as well. But any more on that later on. So some of you might have already seen this slide before, but it's just a quick reminder. Your odds quite quite thin, right? So most of you have applied for medicine and dentistry. No, all of you should have, but most of you might have applied for medicine. Some of you might have applied for dentistry. Dentistry is sort of three times more competitive than medicine. Now, don't let that fool you. It's still possible. You know, I made it, which is shocking, but we're here now. But it's still two very competitive courses, and these are your odds. So, what can you do? You can do a lot of preparation because a lot of people think they're fine with interviews. Okay, this is, I'm a natural talker. I can smooth talk my way into the interviews and get the offers, but that's not how it's going to work. You got to put in the practice. You got to learn the content. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's doable. It's definitely doable. So some of you might have seen this slide again. This was from our webinar a few weeks back, but just to remind you all, especially if you're also new to us, this is what the journey looks like. You want to sit down and you want to prepare. What does it mean by prepare? You gotta gain the knowledge. So that's watching videos, that's reading articles, that's reading books. There's a really good book which I recommended last time, who I've actually given away now. But it's a book for dentistry by Marion Cole. It's a really, really good book on preparing for dentistry interviews. She should really give me some commission for that, for recommending that book so many times. But it's a really useful book to get your content in for dentistry. I'm sure for medicine, there's other similar books as well. There's way, way more books for that. But if you go on websites like the UCAT people, Medic Portal, Medic Mind, a lot of these websites have a lot of content that you can sort of soak up. We will have our interview guide in the next few days that actually, if you just use that, you'll be fine. So expect that soon. The next thing that a lot of people really neglect is practicing. You can have all the content, and if you don't practice, like today's webinar will have some practice opportunities. If you don't practice, then what's the point? Because you can have all the content, but if you don't know how to say it in a certain way, then you're cooked. So it's really important to make sure you're practicing in front of a mirror, in front of friends, in front of family, literally in school. In school, if a lot of us in school ourselves, we set up like in twos or threes and we just practice with each other. Like one person was listening, one person was speaking, one person was observing, writing notes, doing the feedback. So it's really important to do that with your friends and make use of those circles. I think the third thing is execution, and that's practicing one-to-one with people in the field, medics, dentists, dental students, medical students. And something that I wish I did was attend a mock MMI. There's so many opportunities, whether it's paid or free opportunities. In Birmingham, there's something called BWAMs, for those of you who haven't heard of it. I'm sure in every city there's some sort of free MMI, but you have to look out for it. It only happens like once every year. But then even the paid MMIs, they're an investment in your future, you know? And it's a real practice of what the actual thing will look like. So I'd recommend you all make sure that you're practicing with friends and family and execute on on the knowledge that you've learned and constantly reflect, okay, how can I get better and better and better? Don't just get cocky and think, okay, I'll be fine. No, no, no. You gotta keep refining because we looked at these chances, right? There's thousands of people doing the same thing you're doing. Thousands. So you need to make sure, okay, how can I be different? How can I excel? And part of that is practicing more, but part of that is also practicing smartly and refining your answers and improving 1% every single day, because that's how you're going to get the offers. Right. So onto the motivation part. Why do interviewers care about your motivation? Motivation is probably the hardest question. For me, it was hard. For Aladdin, it was one of the hardest stations. And it's hard because like, what's the point? But interviewers are sort of testing your resilience, they're testing your reflection, your realism as well. Because medicine and dentistry are tough degrees. The dropout rate is crazy. In my first term, there were a few people that dropped out, and there's only like 80 people in my year in dentistry. And medicine, there's quite a lot of dropouts as well. As the months go by, as the years go by, imagine all that work for interviews and you drop out in first or second year. You can't hack it. Well, you can, but some of those people just think they can. So the interviewers are making sure, okay, if I give this person a spot in this medical or dental school, are they going to stay for the full 5 years? They also care, are they going to be good doctors or dentists? These are actual questions in mock MMIs. At the end, there might be a checkbox. I've seen it myself. Is this person going to be a good doctor? Can this person be my dentist? So it tests not only if you're capable of being resilient throughout the years, but also are you going to end up being a doctor or a dentist? Because there's all these OSCEs and exams, but this is sort of a funnel in. These are going to be like if you do well over the next few years and pass all your exams in medicine and dentistry, you're going to end up being a doctor and dentist, and that's crazy. So you've got to have that that exam at the start, that those interviews to test, is this person capable? Is this person the right person to be the doctor and dentist? Have they thought about it? Because if you haven't thought about your motivation deeply enough, then you're more at risk of dropping out. So that's why motivation is important, not just for the interview, but also for yourself. Is medicine and dentistry actually for you? And you might have decided that now after you've done all the hurdles, but trust me, it's better to do that now rather than in second year, third year, figure out and find out, oh, medicine and dentistry wasn't for me. So it's about testing what experiences has this candidate had, what was taken away from those experiences in terms of work experience, in terms of volunteering. And the key thing involved is, does this candidate understand what they've signed up for? That's the most important thing. Because if you don't know what you've signed up for, then um, you know, it's not the best thing. But it's good also in that motivation question because you can clock, okay, this person's waffling about what they're saying. How and it's also like you can really sense the genuinity. Has this person prepared? Okay, because there's a difference between preparing for an interview. Everyone should prepare for an interview. You can't just like, you know, go with the flow. And there's a difference with memorization, and a lot of courses as well, they teach you to memorize your answers. You should not be doing that because they can catch you out. So don't memorize. You got to prepare. You got to think, okay, how can I prepare for this? And the interview should give you a good sense of your personality as well. Is this again? It goes back to it. Can this person be my doctor? Can this person be my dentist? Dean, have you got anything to add?
I'm sorry, I was just sending a reply. In terms of adding to the why do they care aspect, for me, just, and I'm sure a lot of you relate, when you try to think about why you want to do medicine or why does the university care about why I want to do medicine, you can tell why they want to care, but then you think to yourself, I know they care, but I don't really have anything good to say. I'm just like all these other candidates. I'm only applying to medicine or dentistry for the typical reasons. That's how I used to think. I think deep down, everyone has a bit of a special reason. You're not going to come out with anything that you can write a book on, some groundbreaking reason. But at least for me, I think the whole process of preparing for this specific question in the interview phase really drove my ability to reflect as a person. Because for questions such as an ethical scenario, there's a bit of logic involved, a bit of common sense, and a bit of reading, but it kind of tests your either your intellect or your social intellect. Whereas when you ask someone why do they want to do medicine, it's testing neither really. It's just testing your genuine, true, original driving factors. So, really, of all questions that you prepare for in the interview, not only is why do you want to do medicine or dentistry the most important question and the most like asked question, but also the one that will take the most reflection rather than you going out and reading a book about it. There's not really much content out there that's gonna that you can sort of steal or magpie. Trust me, a lot of people have tried. You really just need to sit down and think. Why do I want to do medicine and how can I sort of word it and express it in a way that the interviewer will understand that this is not just a typical sort of response. That's what you're going for. Nothing crazy, but something just a little bit different.
Yeah, that's really important. It's really important. Thank you, Dean. I think there's been a few questions in the chat about personal experiences and how can you prepare for the answer. I think with interview answers in general, the best thing to do I find this worked for me, probably worked for Aladdin as well, that works for the majority of people is just have bullet points because it gives you that balance between preparation and you're not memorizing. You've prepared, you know what you're going to say. You've sort of memorized like some of the bullet points, or you have an idea, but you haven't memorized, okay, this is exactly how I'm going to say it in this order, and this is blah blah blah. No, no, no. So that's how I would treat these questions. In terms of why medicine and dentistry, you want to think about structuring it in your head. So for me, I I referred to the work experience. I was like, okay, I saw the dentist. I really liked how there were so many different skills and interests combined together. You know, dentistry is being a doctor, so D for dentistry. EN is like an engineer. You're engineering the tooth, and TIST is like an artist. That's a lot of people have said that. It's not really unique, but it sort of combined a lot of things, and that's why I liked it as well, because I was really worried myself, and I said that in the interview. I was really worried about how, I might end up not liking dentistry because it's so specialized. But actually, within dentistry, within medicine, there's a lot of paths. Even though like people say, oh, dentistry, there's only six specialties. No, no, there's way more than that. Not in terms of specialties, but in terms of there's research, there's med tech, there's entrepreneurship, there's sort of developing technology. You can go down the corporate route. There's a lot of things. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, doctor, engineer, dentist, artist, there's so many aspects of dentistry. There's so many aspects of medicine. So I saw the dentist and I was like, okay, this dentist has a lot of skills. There's a lot of things that I liked in dentistry. Like I gave it a bit of a structure. I didn't just go in tangents. Um, and there's always some like common themes, and you might have like cherry picked them or like little picked them in your personal statement, which is like lifelong learning, intellectual curiosity, problem solving, science, working with people, all these things. But if you just find one or two and like it's a genuine reason. Like for me, it's the fact that I can do so much with dentistry, but also I like speaking to the patients because I like communicating. I see myself more of a sort of extrovert. But also something about dentistry is that you do the treatment and you see the effect right there and then. You can't really get that with medicine. Not to diss the medics. The medics do like a really good job. Um, we spend our whole time just saving a tooth or saving the gums, whereas medics save like an entire life. And that's not to demean the dentist either, but everyone has their role. But what I found what was unique is dentistry. Okay, you've looked at you've done the treatment, you've diagnosed and you've done the treatment there and then in the same appointment, or maybe in two appointments. So it's a lot more fulfilling. Whereas medicine, a lot of it might be referrals or might take months or whatever it is. But there's a lot of problem solving with that maybe certain people might like. But if you genuinely think, okay, why is it that I sat down in my work experience and I liked this degree, I liked this career, and you figure that out, there's one or two or three reasons, deep reasons, and you just journal about that, you reflect about that, and you just expand and expand and expand, then you'll get a good motivation answer. And there's only really a few motivation questions or maybe one motivation station, but it's still quite common. And the thing is that everyone's story is unique as well. So what I said, parts of it is not unique, but the reasons that connect will be unique and powerful. And like I said, reflect and be honest. But mentioning your work experience in volunteering is quite important, because it treat it like a story. Like you didn't just go and get up and do work experience, did you? There's a reason why you wanted to do the work experience. There's something that led you to do the work experience. So start off with that. Maybe it was a childhood thing, but don't make it up because I can like people can tell. When we did MMIs, like last year as mentors, we could tell when people were making things up or like it was just for the sake of it. No, no, have a true reason. It's hard. It's really, really hard. It's probably the hardest station. But just think about how can I make it flow as a story. I'll let Dean anything to add.
No, not really. I think that part was really well explained.
Okay. Something that a lot of students struggle with, and someone that actually is in this webinar that I spoke to at school, is that they're scared that their reason isn't unique. There's a few things you can take inspiration from. So there's a biochemistry, there's the need to help people, how versatile the degree is, the technology. So some of these things I've mentioned. So the need to help people. So one branch of that for me is I like the fact that dentistry, you can help them there and then. How versatile the degree is so open. I've mentioned that. I'm not too interested in biochemistry, and I will be honest with the interviewer and talk more about these two things. And I won't say I don't like biochemistry because it'll be like a bit of a red flag. Not too much, but like be honest. Okay, these 2 points for me, these are the two things that really like stood out to me. And technology and advancements as well, the research and the progression and helping people. A lot of it is helping people. I think most humans in society want to help people. I mean, if you don't like, but mainly don't be afraid that your reason isn't unique either. It's just to make sure, like we said at the start, that you have a reason. And a lot of the reasons will be similar, but if you at least have a reason and you can convince the interviewer that that reason is true, then you'll be fine. And anyways, you've got all the other stations as well to sort of balance with it. If your motivation station is really weak, make sure you're doing really well in your ethics, in your role play, in your hot topics, in your data interpretation, all these other stations. But yeah, don't feel shy to sort of take away from inspiration from other answers. But like Aladdin, it's hard to magpie it all. It needs to come from you. It needs to really come from your heart and relate it to your passion. And the thing with these questions is you gotta fake it as well to an extent. Like speak enthusiastically. Like if you have no energy, no, you gotta bring the energy because you gotta show to the interviewers like this is the degree like I really want to do. And if it's not, then that's something you have to figure out yourself. But you want to prove your passion to the interviewer. Aladdin, have you got anything else to add?
Again, no, I think that was well explained. And but what I do think I want to do, there's a few questions in the chat. If I just take a minute to go through them verbally instead of going through them by text, then we'll just have them. Most of them are replied to. Muniba, for hot topics, is it a case that I'm asking you to discuss a hot topic, or can they throw any random one at you and expect you to know it? Either really. So they could just ask you about, for example, a hot topic is the future of the NHS. So, what do you think the future of the NHS is? It'll be a little more directed, but the general idea is they just want to see what you know about it, poke around, and then they'll start probably picking at the actual things that you said. Um, in terms of do they expect you to know it, most of these are something that everyone will know about. Like everyone knows something about the NHS and its future and its current state, but how much you know, what, how interesting the things you say and what it kind of boils down to. So don't treat it as a mechanism in chemistry where you know it or you don't know it. Treat it as something that you want to refine and strengthen. So that's the way I'd answer that question. In terms of Stephanie, would it be a good idea to mention how I thought I wanted to go into research? I've had a look at that, and the reply said, yeah, that's definitely an angle to go upon. However, just alone saying the work experience switched me from research isn't enough on itself. Again, it comes back to reflecting. Reflect on why the actual work experience has drawn you away from research. Go into the specifics of why. I think they'd like to hear that because that's a really nice way to approach the question. And finally, Amran, what should you do if they ask the hot top? What should you do if the hot topic that they ask you about you do not know at all? Um, I mean, with a bit of like wider reading, with our interview guide for one, and in general, the UK CAT website, that sort of thing. I have got a book I can recommend as well at the end if you ask. Those kind of cover it. Hot topics are called hot for a reason. It's because everyone knows about them. They're all over the news, and you're definitely online. You're 16 to 18, and they're just very big topics. So it's very unlikely that you'll have absolutely nothing to say. Don't worry about it too much from that angle. What I'd be more concerned about is how you can make what you say interesting, and the biggest way you're going to get that is by practice because you're going to have interesting ideas in your mind, just not if you can't execute them, it's going to come out quite bland. So yeah, even though it's a question where you think you need to learn it, it's more about how you execute it, I think, personally, from my experience anyway. And finally, Rami, can you change the angle of the question if you do not know the hot topic rather than saying I don't know? Um, you can try to approach it from a different angle, but if they ask you about the future of the NHS, you can't start talking about a different hot topic. That will, because they'll probably have marks for relevance, and you will score zero for relevance. So, wouldn't really go through it like that. But like I said, don't worry too much about not knowing what it is. Will they ask questions about other articles in the news? If they're going to ask about a specific article, they might show you it. You're not expected to recall any specific article that was on the BBC last week or something. Don't worry about it like that. So yeah, back over to Kareem.
Thank you. Yeah, those are some very good questions. For more of you who have more questions, there will also be a Q&A panel at the end as well. But instead of asking the questions to us, we're going to ask the questions to you now. So there will be an opportunity now for a few people to have a go at this. If you want to have a go at this question, and usually the people who practice these types of questions in the webinars with us, they're the ones who are likely to get the offer. And we said this last time, and we'll say it again and again and again. But if you want to have a go at this question live and get advice from us and the chat, put your hand up.
Guys, can I just add, I really wish I had this opportunity back when I was preparing, because I did a mock MMI, that sort of thing, but to be able to do it with people who have gotten into medicine and also to do it in front of what we've got 90 people joining us today, nearly 100, so it's a very like sort of great opportunity. I would really go for it if I was you.
Right. Ziad, as always, you always have your hand up first. Have a
Wait,
go.
can I go second, please? Like, let someone go before me. I'm still thinking. Think.
Okay. You're gonna have to do the next question now. It's
Okay.
fine. Netra, do you want to have a go?
Um, yeah, I haven't answered this before, by the way. Um, I would say the reason why I want to start dentistry probably started from when in A level, when I first decided that I quite liked the idea of sciences, and when exploring different career options in that field, I started realizing that I quite like the idea of healthcare. And what drew me to it is the interaction that you get with patients constantly. And I quite like the idea of helping people in that way, whilst also keeping my interest of specifically biology and chemistry. And when I was doing more research into that, I then, like dentistry, then sparked my interest. And I would say one of the main reasons because of why dentistry did is also from a personal experience since I had went through orthodontic treatment that in the near future is leading towards jaw surgery. And when doing that, I've been going for like the past 3 to 4 years. And it kind of opened my eyes to like, first of all, like how interesting it was, because I was quite interested in every time the dentist explained, and it kind of shocked me how much like the mouth affected so much other areas because it's such a small space, but it like affects so much parts of the body. And alongside that, I had to travel about an hour and a half to access this sort of care. Like they're like on there and back. And I think because of that, it kind of made me show like the shortage of dentists. And that made me really want to help contribute and like help with the widespread of dentistry to help provide more care so it's more accessible. Because for me, from my own personal perspective, it wasn't that accessible whatsoever, as it required a lot of traveling back and forth and it was quite far. So after looking at that, that definitely further sparked my interest of wanting to help society and to make sure that I properly and like was definite on this sort of career. I went to work experience, and in work experience, I witnessed how much like of a positive change a person could make to someone, and I saw that as very rewarding by watching when I watched a lady come in after she had fixed her dentures, so that it was a long term, it was like the end of a long term treatment. And after looking at that and like how rewarding it looked to like the dentist, that made me really want to be part of something like that. And furthermore, another reason for why it also interested me specifically in the healthcare field is that it has an artistic element to it. So, like, for example, when doing fillings, which I witnessed in my work experience, like there was an artistic and creative element that you had to make the tooth look as if it's like more realistic. And yeah, that's it.
Nice. How do you think you did?
I don't know. It was my first time, so like okay. It's
Yeah. Okay. Chat. Okay, I feel like a Twitch streamer now. Well, in the chat, what do we think? What do we all think that Netra did well in? Let's get some dubs in the chat. You got praise from Ziad. Nice. Yeah, it's personal, definitely. Very reflective. Yeah, good, good. What do we think Netra could improve on? Yeah, maybe shortening the answer, maybe like slightly, but I'd say it was 30 seconds more, but yeah. And foul, yeah, delivery was slightly going in loops. For your first go, that was decent, you know. A lot of filler words. Ving Yang, yeah. Okay. Anything else from the chat? Right. So there's two things that I'm thinking of. In terms of how long is an answer meant to be. So it depends on the uni. For generally for my unis, like the ones I applied to and did interviews at, like they were around 6 minutes a station, and each station had like three questions. So maybe this might be one question, so you'd be limited to 2 minutes. But others you might have 10 minutes to speak about three questions, so you have a little bit more time. And some of the questions might take longer than others, so you might want to talk about this one more than others. So really, it's really up to you. Yeah, 6 minutes is crazy for one question. Sometimes it might be two or three, but it won't. I don't think it will ever be like that. I think with this Netra, Ving Yang is a good one, and I'd recommend you all to do that to watch that. Even me personally, I'm listening to Ving Yang. So for those of you who don't know, Ving Yang is this like speech. Okay. Bear with us a moment. Right. Um, for those of you who don't know who Ving Yang was, uh, Ving Yang is sort of this guy who does a lot of like communication skills and speeches, and he's got 5 factors of speech, things that I'm trying to implement in these webinars myself, in my speeches, in my talks. Um, it's speed, it's pitch, it's tone, it's pauses, and volume. So those 5 factors of speech, they're very important in you trying not to sound monotone. And this is something we can all work on, but I think it's something a lot of you will find useful. So Netra, I'd take that. I'd try to maybe sound, use your voice. Your voice is a really good tool, and this is what he says. The other thing as well is, yeah, I think sometimes you're going in loops, and that's okay because I think it was your first attempt at doing this, and that's fine. But what I'd say is have a few bullet points in your mind, step by step, not to memorize, not to like constantly rehearse, but to give it a bit more structure because you went from fillings and artistic nature to the work experience and how you traveled an hour and a half away, and then communication and biochemistry, and you went like in all sorts of different things. But you should give it structure, and that's okay. That's something I struggle with, and I struggled with, and I still struggle with now, which is going on tangents. Even in these webinars, some of you might notice that I go on tangents all the time, but that's okay, and it's something we've got to keep practicing in terms of not going from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but we go, okay, A, 1, 2, 3, B, 1, 2, 3, like in a structured way where you're not going everywhere. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. But keep practicing. I think for your first attempt, that was actually quite decent. Keep going. I think we'll have one more person practice this question because we've got more questions. Musa, do you want to have a go?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Shall I answer 3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. So this is quite a difficult question for me because lots of different reasons inspired me to apply for medicine. But if I had to narrow it down to one specific memory, was probably from my work experience in year 12, where I went to an acute medicine department in my local hospital. And it was this one significant patient who had who we had to do a procedure on where you take chest fluid. And when the consultant talked about the procedure, I could see the immense shock on the patient's face. And through the doctor's empathetic communication and body language, it allowed the patient to open up about her feelings. And it came out to be that she had a really poor experience in the past with a similar experience where she had an unsuccessful operation and she was left with lots of repercussions and things that she didn't really enjoy. And so I saw through the doctor's communication skills and his means of um, sort of getting down to the level of the patient by maintaining eye contact and comforting the patient using soft language and clarity in his explanation, that the patient eventually agreed to the procedure and voiced her own concerns, where she said that she's very deathly afraid of needles. And so the doctor took this into account and used his multidisciplinary team, where he invited his colleagues into the same procedure and he appointed them the role of distracting the patient during this procedure. So they talked to the patient, who was quite an elderly lady, and they distracted her by talking about her knitting, which she always used to do on the ward. And I saw that there and then with my very own eyes that the patient opened up more and she had that trust with the doctor to commit a procedure which she probably wouldn't have thought she'd ever do again. And it was really humbling to see how the doctor has so much power in his hands, and he's got that doctor-patient relationship where he's able to get sensitive information out of the patient in order to get the best quality of care. And ultimately, I think that is why I've applied for medicine, because you're able to combine your scientific and clinical and emotional knowledge and expertise um, to get to get successful patient outcome and improve their quality of care, improve their well-being, both physically and mentally. So that is what inspired me to apply for medicine.
Musa, that was a very good response. Well done. And you rounded it off quite nicely as well. It felt like quite a natural sort of round off. What do you think went well and what do you think you could have improved on?
I think I stayed on track with the question. I wasn't going off tangents, and I was able to combine my interest in science as well as like the whole human side of medicine, which was good. And I think I used a good amount of key buzzwords like MDT, empathy, things like that. And I think that would quite impress the interviewers.
I agree. Buzzwords, as long as they're not too unnatural, even if they're a bit squeezed in, they'll let it slide because at the end of the day, they have mark schemes in front of them, and you do need to kind of clip those buzzwords as long as they're said relevantly. So I like your approach towards that. in the chat as well, I'll encourage people to give Musa one good thing he did and one good thing, one thing he can improve on. But in terms of, from me, one thing that I would say was done well is the fact that, like, the way you told it, it felt like a natural sort of story. I think that helps keep the interviewer engaged, and I think a lot of people lack that skill. So I was able to stay engaged pretty easily. If interviewers can't stay engaged, then they are going to tend to try and sort of recover themselves, which would make them maybe drop a few marks for you. So that's one good thing that you did. Something that not wouldn't just apply to you, but in general, and it's not a major improvement, but one that is quite a high yield one. For example, a lot of your story was based off of that one lady with and her story with the needle, which is fine. It's an anecdote, but try not to go for the angle of this one anecdote of the lady with the needle. She probably did not inspire you to go through UCAS process, personal statement, and UCAT. So use it as a sort of like a something to step off, to branch into generally why the principles of that interaction made you want to apply. So what can you take away from that? You can take away the empathy. You can take away the fact that a doctor works in a multidisciplinary team. But just the way you phrase it, angle it so that it's this anecdote is an example of these things, which are why I want to do medicine, rather than just say this is the story that happened and it kind of made you want to do medicine. I hope that kind of explains it a bit clearly.
Yeah,
But nevertheless, a really good response, and the improvement is quite a minor one. So I think that would score quite well. Well done.
thank you.
I would say one thing, um, and this is to everyone else. Musa has definitely practiced, and we can both tell he's practiced. So he's not. This is not his first time. So there's two poles here. There's someone who's practiced. Well, I can tell who's practiced for weeks, and someone who's just had their first go, and that's okay because everyone's on their own journey. So one of the DMs I got on WhatsApp from one of my students said, "I'm worried because everyone else around me is doing interview prep and I haven't started." That's okay. Don't compare yourself to everyone. Obviously, to an extent, you gotta see, okay, if you're a month late, you gotta like lock in, you know what I mean? But at the same time, everyone's on their own stage. Musa could be really good at motivation, but could be horrible at ethics. Not saying that to you, Musa, but um, you know, someone else could be really bad at motivation, but they're wonderful at ethics. So everyone's on their own journey. The point is help each other and keep working. But Alauddin's point is really good as well, and I would encourage you all to listen to Alauddin because he's got four interviews, four offers. He won't say it, but he has a lot of wisdom. So yeah, Alauddin, do you want to take over here now?
Yeah, if we can get the. Oh yeah, there we go. Got the slides. Right. So my section is about reflecting on your experiences. It kind of ties back to what I said right at the start. One of the first things I said to you about how I found the reflection focused questions harder. So I a little ironic that I'll talk about them. However, it does make sense because they're the ones I had to work on the most, which meant they ended up being my strongest. I'd say the why do you want to do medicine question, for example, went from being my weakest to my strongest. And it took a lot of reflection. So reflection applies to all questions, quite literally all of them. And it just applies to some questions more than others. Let's get into what the slide has got here. So pausing before answering is a really great approach. Just don't stretch it too long. You will feel a bit awkward. I can definitely relate to that, but it's fine. And the interviews done this many times during that interview season. Most likely they've been doing it for a few years, so they would have done it hundreds, if not thousands of times by now, and they would have seen people pause. So don't think they're going to be like shocked at all. Something that would be good as well, so just mention, I'll just take a 20-second pause here, collect my thoughts, and present them to you. Something that sort of primer is fine. Quality over quantity, as you can probably guess. Um, and both of the examples that we had that we've just asked you, the two people who just responded, they showed good quality as well. So if you're looking for quality, you could start looking at that for sort of inspiration. So a lot of people can just fill up the 5 minutes without getting anywhere. And just hitting buzzwords and not making them relevant, again, doesn't really score well. So yeah, quality, very important. Pick 1 to 2 meaningful experiences. Don't flick between 5 to 6. I think that would be self-explanatory. Star. This is a really common and really applicable sort of a framework. I'll just tell you what it stands for in the coming slides, but it's or we'll flick now. Yeah, there we go. Situation, task, action, results, reflection. It's a very general sort of framework. This is not like it's not going to blow anyone's mind. This isn't going to solve the interview conundrum. Once you've got STAR, it's not like you've unlocked and finished interviews, but it just gives you something to frame your answer on, because when you're actually there trying to execute it, it can be a bit overwhelming and you might just feel all over the place. It just gives you something to fall back on. That's the way I would go about it. If you follow STAR, it kind of guarantees that you show what the interviewer is looking for, just because it's very logically laid out from start to finish of the sort of story that you're going to tell. So that's STAR. If we could flip back to the previous slide. Link experiences back to medicine and dentistry. This kind of fits into how I gave feedback to Musa. In terms of like linking a story back to general medicine and dentistry. So that story with the old lady, for example, linking it back to what a doctor generally does and why it attracts you to one day doing what the doctor generally does. So that is quite important. Balancing clinical and non-clinical experiences. Very important as well. And the best way you can do that is by balancing work experience and volunteering. And I can see those are the 2 sub bullet points now. So I've said this a lot to anyone who's ever spoken to me about getting into medical school. Work experience and volunteering are severely underrated and underappreciated as talking points for your interviews. You really need to milk the most that you can out of your work experience and volunteering. That means doing as much as you can with work experience and volunteering and reflecting as much as you can. And the best way, like Kareem said, bullet points. So what I did personally, and I think this works for anyone, before interviews, I had a page on Notion. I don't know if you guys use Notion for work experience. All I did was just write down bullet points of anything that popped into my mind that I thought was helpful. Same for volunteering. Any story, any talking point, anything, literally anything. So it's kind of like blurting, but instead of doing glycolysis and the steps and that, you're blurting for your medical interview, which is hopefully a bit easier. So yeah, work experience and volunteering, really try not to sleep on those. I think they're probably 2 of the biggest things that I talked about in interviews. For how you can actually reflect, it's not about what you saw, however, what you learnt. Again, I'm keep linking it back to Musa's example, but only because you guys have just heard it, so it's fresh in your mind, and I can keep linking it to that. His was done well, but what I can say is what he saw in that story, he did link it back to what he learned. So use what he said, and in general, link it back to medicine. So talking about the patient and how they look stressed, that's all valid, but it's not going to get you too much until you start going sort of back towards why it actually links towards what a doctor does. So what you learned is really the key part. Preparing examples of specific situations, but not memorizing. Again, the bullet points that I had, many of those bullet points were about a specific situation. So if I try to recall one, it's been a couple of years. One of them was how when I was volunteering in a charity shop, one of my roles was to actually help out some other volunteers with educational needs, or even just physical and mental disabilities. So those sorts of situations, I had nowhere near a script. I'd bullet point the fact that these happened and what the main sort of high yield takeaway is. For example, being empathetic to them when at some point one of them was crying, they were distressed. So just having that in the back of your mind, this one time I was volunteering, I was doing it with the lady who comes in who has learning difficulties, so I'm mindful of that, and the specific scenario where she was crying because of one of the customers. just having that in the back of your mind gives you something to talk about and apply it when possible. I didn't have a script about the whole story and what happened, so that's the sort of thing we're going for. Start, we've been over. It really is start. Do not look into it too much in terms of situation needs to be exactly this, task needs to be exactly this. It's a broad framework, and that's what you want to get out of it. So yeah, use it as a guide, merge points and remove points. To help conversations flow easier if needed. So it's just to collect your thoughts, really. It's not like interviewers will be aware of star, and there's nothing wrong with that if they identify you using star, but it's not like you must use star in that specific order. So don't worry about approaching it like that. Their mark schemes don't say, did the student start talking about action before the task and then go back to task? Like, as long as it flows naturally, you'll be fine.
Right, so
All right,
there's
so we've
two
got,
questions here.
yeah.
There's team and empathy. I think we'll just have one try each. So just two people can have a go before we conclude. So I'll let Dean, if you wanna.
Yeah, sure. So I'll have a look at who's got their hands up and tell me about a time you worked as part of a team. Um, and just before we get into answering this question, really have a think about work experience and especially volunteering. Like I said, those sorts of things will really help you with these sorts of questions. So obviously you don't have to use it, but advice from me, if you can try and give a worked example of you using that when you respond to this, that would be good. So if anyone's raised their hands, and then we'll pick someone and get talking. Yep, Ziad.
Okay, so a time when I worked as part of a team. So one time when we were working as part of a team, I was in Scouts. We were on a camp. The camp we were on was MSF camp, where like 800 Scouts sections come from all over the UK. And because I'm an explorer, we were in charge of um, distributing different food to each group. We were in charge of cleaning the toilets. We were in charge of running the kitchen, transporting equipment around the campsite. So one of the things that we did was that we were unloading the van full of like equipment at the end of like the day, and we were all tired, so we just worked through it. There was one person inside the van who was giving me the product or the item or chair, and I was at the door of the van and then giving it to the next person, and we worked well. And then there was like a problem where like there's like a big item, so I had to use like a skill. I used to have to use like a skill like a problem solving skill because it was quite a heavy item and we need multiple people. So I went around the campsite. I led by example and went by around the campsite, asked leaders who are adults to help us lift the item. We lifted it. It was a big water tank that we had for to fill with water. So yeah. Yeah, that's what I can remember for part of the team.
While I discuss with Ziad what he thinks about it, if people can put in the chat what they thought about his response as well while that's happening, that would be great. Ziad, what do you think? Something that you did well and something that you thought immediately, oh, I could have done that better.
I think I linked it. I think I spoke of. Wait, am I speaking yet? I think I spoke about the situation correctly, but I forgot to link it back to an example in my work experience that I've seen. I think I can do it now, but it's over now. But yeah,
Don't
yeah,
worry.
yeah.
Yes, I'm actually not that concerned about you linking it back to work experience per se. But you're right in the terms of linking, so we'll get to that. So your example, did you say MSF?
Yeah,
Yeah, so Doctors Without Borders, guys, they're a really good thing to go down. I feel like if I was an interviewer and I heard someone at the age of 16 to 18 has worked with MSF, I would be very, very impressed. So that immediately kind of set up his response to like a high level to me. I was immediately just kind of happy to hear about what he was doing. So In terms of the question and linking it, you don't have to link it to work experience, though you can. It's just about reflecting about how you worked in a team. In your sense, you told me about the situation. You described like the whole, like what you were doing, your roles, and what you did as a team. I just want a bit more about like reflection on the actual thing, something that you really think you could have done better, or something that someone else did that you feel like you helped fix. Just like but essentially going down the reflection route more. Because the question, so earlier we were discussing motivation, and there you might want to link it more to work experience. Here you can link it to work experience as long as just the whole pivot of the question is reflection. So it's really about showing how you reflect about being a team member. So you could link it to work experience by talking about the MDT and how you need to be reflective to work in an MDT. So that's the sort of thing I would go down, like sort of just how you reflected about what you did during that sort of volunteering phase.
I can say like something like the same way in my work experience, how I saw how doctors or how doctor or consultant led the MDT meeting. I decided to go and lead and try find more help to lift this heavy item.
Exactly, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And finally, after you've linked the two, link them both back to you being a reflective person because the question's angling towards reflection. So how the doctor is a reflective person because he has to be reflective to work in an MDT. He has to reflect on what he can do well and what he can't do so well. You had to be reflective. And then how both, you and the doctor, well, you're trying to be a doctor. So you link both of those things to reflection in general. But still an excellent response.
Thank you.
Right. Second question. Again, anyone who wants to have a go, just raise your hand. Tell me about a time you showed empathy. So again, a very common question, a very general question, but like the why do you want to do medicine, it's one that you'll have to prepare for. Just bear in mind it's a reflection question, not a motivation. Obviously, it doesn't mean you can't talk about motivation, but the main pivot is reflection. So any hands up? I feel like people are getting a little less brave now than earlier. No, we've got a hand. We've got Harris. Yeah, Harris, if you can unmute, if you can take your camera on as well, that would be even better. But yeah, have a go.
Hi, okay. This is my first time answering this kind of question, to be honest, but I'll just give it a go. So tell me a time about you seeing empathy. So I think during my work experience at Russell Hall, I was in the A&E department, and I was shadowing a doctor who was reporting the findings of the patient, and the patient seemed quite distressed, to be honest. I mean, initially I saw that her head was down, right? She was smiling, but her head was down, and she didn't seem very responsive to the doctor. She was very quiet. So I thought there may be something wrong. She may feel upset. So to be honest, she looked like she was about to cry. So I thought the first thing I can do is just kind of ease it into it, because if I just straight away ask her, how are you doing? What's wrong? She may feel a bit, apprehensive at first. So I just asked her simply, how has your day been? Just kind of to initiate small talk to see how she was feeling. And initially, I just had a conversation with her about small things, the weather, I don't know, the football. But then, as we got further into the conversation, I asked her, "Well, are you doing okay? I noticed you weren't quite responsive to the doctor, and you seemed a bit down." And that was when she told me that she felt almost a bit useless and unable to be independent. And she said that I asked her, well, why do you feel this way? And she told me that because of a disability, there are certain things which she couldn't do, and that may make her feel almost inadequate. So I just decided to kind of just talk to her and just tell her that having a disability doesn't affect her value. And I took it from her perspective. And I said she almost felt like felt like a strain on her partner. So, I just kind of tried to tell her that, if your partner's with you, right, they're not gonna, considering, you're in a relationship, they probably almost are happy that they're able to kind of help you. and there wouldn't be a burden. You know, you wouldn't be a burden to you or anyone, right? And having a disability doesn't affect your value. She can still, you know, she was educated. She went to university, so I saw her that, you know, you've clearly shown to yourself that you're able to do it. You're able to make a, you know, to have a good impact on your life and progress in your life, despite your disability. And I mean, after the conversation, I thought she seemed happier. She was smiling, and you know, she had a laugh at the end of the conversation, and she said thank you at the end for talking with her while the doctor was filling out the report. And I mean, you know, having that kind of experience did really push me to do medicine, because you know, having people kind of open up to you like that, you know, able to show, you know, well, kind of, when it says empathy, you know, showing empathy to people, it's not something you can do in many other careers. That's something which really drives me as well to do medicine. Yeah, thank you.
Again, a great response. Immediately, what I can say went well is the fact that you timed that quite well. You didn't talk for too little or too much. Again, guys, while I give feedback to Harris, if you can add feedback in the chat for him to have a look at, that is greatly appreciated. There's a lot of people, so we can get a lot of good constructive feedback. Harris, one good thing that I can immediately tell you did was, I don't know if you did this intentionally or not, it doesn't have to be intentional, but you followed the STAR sort of framework quite well. Obviously, it doesn't mean you go STARR, it's not that rigid, but you kind of you laid out what was happening, then you laid out what needed to be done, and yeah, you spent a good chunk on what you did, and within what you did, you worked in your reflection. So STAR was followed really well, and when you follow STAR quite well, you kind of set yourself up for a good response. Like you can't really do STAR well and get a bad response. In terms of something to improve, like I said, you worked in your reflections into what you were doing. So I could tell that you're a reflective person and that you reflected on the situation. But to get even better, essentially, to push those higher interview questions, what you want to try and do is make it more explicit, make the reflection portion more explicit. So you have enough reflection. I just want it to be more explicit. So that's what, because then the interviewer can really, at the end of the day, in front of them they've got a sheet of like 5 lines, you know, and it says like 3 marks for relevance, 4 marks for what they did being relevant, 5 marks for them reflecting on it. It just looks like that. They might have bands, but that's about it. So to really just not leave any room for negotiation with the interviewer, I just want you to make everything you say very deliberate and explicit, which is difficult. Again, it's where practice comes in. But again, one of the best responses we've had. That was very good.
Thank you for the feedback.
No worries. So we're just having a look at concluding now the webinar. We'll have a Q&A at the end, but this really just kind of summarizes the key takeaways you need to take away, of which there are 3. First of all, linking back to what Kareem was saying at the start, because he spoke about the motivation or why you want to do medicine with dentistry aspect. It's making your reason personal to you. And like I said, that does not have to be something that someone would write a book about or make a movie about. It's not some crazy new thing, but just don't go down the route of saying I like being nice to people or I'm interested in science and leaving it at that. By the way, those two things are perfectly fine to say as long as you just give them a bit of salt and pepper. Just give them something that's a little bit personal to you. Link it to something personal that happened. And I'm not really talking about having like a grandmother who had some sort of medical issue. Obviously, again, fine to talk about. What I'm looking for though is something that links to you inside, like why you're driven to do it. So that's what I mean by personal, because I think a lot of people just take that as linking it to something they saw personally or something they experienced personally. No, it's about what you reflected personally, what you've reflected on yourself. So yeah, using the STAR method to reflect. Again, use it as a general framework, and you really can't go wrong in terms of how you framed your answer. And obviously, best till last, keep practicing and don't memorize. So if you guys want a sort of bulletproof method that works, just setting up a Word document or Notion for work experience, for volunteering. I had one for the why do you want to do medicine? Because to me, it was such an annoying question. It deserved its own category. So, and just put bullet points throughout the months in the lead up to your interviews of things that you think are interesting. You'll have a lot of bullet points, but let's say you have 20, 30 bullet points. That's going to come to about a page, 2 pages, is that sort of thing. Again, you don't memorize the bullet points, not even the bullet points, even though they're not scripts, you don't even memorize them, but you just read over them and they become sort of, you become intimate with them. So it's the whole idea is to have things prepped in the back of your mind for your practice and ultimately for your interview. So you never really get stuck on what to say and you always say relevant things. So I did a lot more interview practice than I did time in interviews and it showed. So, that's what the route that you want to go down because you have your bullet points ready in the back of your mind. You practice pulling them from the back of your mind out of your mouth into the interviewer. And you do that by practice before the interview. And then by the time you reach the interview, you've done sort of both stages and you'll be ready. So yeah, keep practicing and don't memorize.
Thank you, Ala. Dean, just before the Q&A panel, for those of you who are new to our community, do just scan the QR code to join the WhatsApp. Now, it is quite a useful resource. There's a lot of mentors on there. We've got a community of students who are always helping each other. There's a lot of interview preparation, and that's how you get access to our webinars as well. So do make sure to do that. Do follow our social media as well, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, and that's where we post a lot of our courses, webinars, opportunities, as well as the WhatsApp. So do keep in touch. The link is in the chat as well. It's linktree/Medentors. So if anyone is on the phone and can't really access the QR code, it is in the chat. Just click Linktree and then there's a WhatsApp group. But yeah. So what's sort of coming next? We've got your journey to medicine and dentistry, and that's sort of more for year 12s, but it's something that you can all reflect on. We've got our Medentors Society webinar on the 19th, and we also have an academy series when mocks come round. We have also sold out our interview course, so for those of you who have registered, please join. Please look out for the email to join the start of the course on Tuesday. The mock MMIs as well, they will be coming up in the next few weeks with more details coming soon. And the interview guide is literally days away, if not hours away from being published. That's just when the team finishes it. And yeah, it will be a really good resource for those of you who are still learning the content and still practicing and still looking for model answers. And in terms of school visits, if any of you go to a school where you think that we could come in and give a talk about medicine and dentistry and maybe even evolve into a partnership, please do reach out to us via Instagram. We already work with leading schools in Birmingham, Manchester, and Liverpool, but we want to work with as many as possible. So do reach out to us if you'd like us to come into your school. The interview guide is a free resource, just to clarify. It will be on the website, it will be posted on the WhatsApp community and on the Instagram, everywhere basically. It's absolutely for free. So that will be a really good resource that I think everyone will find that useful. We've also had our UCAT guide and strategic applications guide, which a lot of people have found useful. But there's a lot of stuff that we do for free to sort of level the playing field. Anyways, enough about us. We're at the Q&A panel now, so we'll give it a few minutes if anyone's got any pressing questions, important questions. We'll answer as many as possible, but we will probably answer the key ones as well. With a controversial question at Nabia, I think it's important to refer to the law. It's quite controversial, but there's a lot of ethical issues, and I think as long as you have that understanding of the ethical stuff, so we covered it in the ethical webinar, then it would be good to understand that okay, there's the sort of the autonomy in of the patient, and also the hospital can sort of reject that because they don't think it's indicated. A lot of these hospitals might think it's better, might reject it, and the patient goes down the private route where that might be accepted. Some of the marking points, Joshua, is like communication, sort of content. It's hard to say. because unis don't really give you the mark scheme. But what I will say is, if you one key thing that a lot of unis have at the end is, can this person be my doctor slash dentist? And if you exhibit yourself in a professional manner, if you speak well, if you sort of stand out as well, then you will get that offer. Aladdin, there's a
Yeah.
medicine book that
Yeah. So
you were
just a
talking
quick
about.
one, the medicine book. It's actually on my shelf there if I flip my head. So it's medical school interviews. It's like the publisher slash company is ISC Medical. I'm pretty sure the author is called Olivia Pickard. I'm gonna go and literally pick it up. Yeah. Olivia Pickard and George Lee. You can search it on Amazon, it'll come up like quite, even if you put in medical school interviews, it's one of the first ones that comes up. And to be honest, that book covers like so much. And speaking of reflection, the entire like premise of that book is reflection. All he's saying, the entire book is reflect on how you do this question. And he's got ways that you can reflect and his own reflections on it. So it kind of links to the need for reflection and not just questions that want you to reflect, but every single question. But yeah, in terms of the actual book, got it here along with my sticker from one of my interviews, but I don't know if you can see that. There we go. And Olivia Pickard right there. So
That's a really good book.
yeah, swear by that book is very good. A quick another question to answer from Arsh. Are dental ethical scenario questions the same as medical ones in general or specific to dentistry? Think of them as a Venn diagram with two circles overlapping. A lot of them will overlap, but for example, the medical ones you can kind of guess what they're going to be more so than dentist ones because like for example picking who gets the organ, that sort of thing. But for dentists there isn't that sort of choice. But I think like an interesting one they could go down the route of is you can present two treatments to the patient. One of them brings you more money, however, like, and it's fine and you can do it, but one of them is you think is better for the patient, and maybe the patient is even pushing for the one that benefits you more. But balance, especially for dentists more than us medics, balancing your sorts of personal benefits versus the patient's benefits is a lot harder because it's not life or death. So it's a lot easier to morally bypass, and it's very subjective. So, for example, that's like one sort of thing where dentistry questions would be a little different to medicine, but in general, the overlap is very big, and you bring the same principles to everything anyway. So, yeah.
I think we'll leave it at that for today. Thank you all of you for coming along to the webinar. I think I hope